it takes an average of about 39 days, to fill a vacancy, but that the best talent is hired within the first 10 days.
Hello and welcome to the guest segment on Africa Business Radio. I am Chukunonsu Modi. Now, effective recruitment means more than simply hiring the right person for the job. Today, more than ever, the success of any business is largely determined by the caliber and amalgamation of the most suitable talent. On today's show, we are talking about how to identify and hire the right talent to best fit your organization. And joining me to have this conversation is Dirk Pretorius. He is an executive consultant and senior industrial psychologist with 21st Century. Welcome, Dirk. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start with this. On the piece I saw, there was a survey of talent acquisition leaders, which they found that 52% indicated that the most difficult part of recruitment was identifying the right candidate from a large applicant pool. Now, speak to us about the survey and the statistics.
So what we found in the survey itself is that in South Africa, the average amount of people that apply for jobs is about 250 per vacancy. And what we find, in the process is that applicants, only about 75% of those that do apply, are unqualified in the process, and only 88% are not strong enough to move forward, to having an ultimate interview with the organization. And in terms of fulfilling the vacancy, what we also see is that it takes an average of about 39 days, to fill a vacancy, but that the best talent is hired within the first 10 days.
That's quite revealing. So now, with the statistics, this shows that identifying the right candidate is something that is difficult, but then it must be done right. So how much does a bad hiring decision affect an organization?
It's massive. Ultimately, the person that you bring into the organization must be suitable for that position that you hire them for, because the organization is only as strong as the people that it hires, and that ultimately becomes the competitive advantage in the marketplace, for organizations.
True. Now, we also need to look at the cost this will also, incur on the organization, because you spoke about statistics, and if using like 75%, 10 days, to interview an applicant, only for it to turn out that it was a bad choice, so much is involved. So speaking of cost now, how are the expenses when it comes to, recruitment, planning for interviews and the likes?
So first of all, I think there's an internal cost, because you remember when there is a vacancy or a new position must be created. Ultimately, where you start with in HR is something like a job evaluation. And that job evaluation indicates to us what is the true requirements of this position, the type of skill set, qualifications that's needed to, execute the tasks related competently. So that's the first part of it. A lot of internal hours that goes into, really getting the job done on paper. Secondly, there's also the amount of time that goes into the recruitment process, and doing stuff like placing an ad, which costs a lot of money, and ultimately, if the candidate is not the right candidate, you also have or may end up with a significant amount of labor relations costs, by getting rid of that candidate that you hired if they are the wrong fit for the organization.
Okay. So now, how can an organization identify and hire the best fit? Because of all what we have said now, it's obvious that recruiters can really make or break your company. So for organizations, what should they look out for when identifying or hiring talent?
I think if you look at the context, within South Africa, our latest data indicate that 35.3% of the country's population is unemployed. and our youth unemployment is about 65%. So the amount of people out in the market looking for work is significant, and it's very difficult for organizations to find the right talent, if so many people apply, for an individual position at an organization. So first of all, your job application must be absolutely accurate. Okay. The candidates that apply, you must make sure that they, first of all, adhere to the minimum requirements. That might be something like a driver's license or a specific qualification. The more hard criteria that you can sift through in order to determine if someone is capable of doing the job. But then, where we come in as industrial psychologists is ultimately assisting, with assessment instruments to filter, let's call it filtering, to shortlist and find those top candidates that you are trying to, shortlist for the position. And, we can assist in that process. So it's not only the subjective indicators that you have from your interview with the candidate, but, assessments bring an element of objective criteria to the table.
Now, there's this question that is popular among, job applicants and even recruiters, So most people prefer, when you see a vacancy, you see it'll have experience of 5 years, 2 years and the likes. And you just spoke about we having so many unemployed youths, not just youths, but in general in South Africa, not just South Africa, but the world too as well. Now, why is it that recruiters look for, always attach that, have a 5-year experience, have a 2-year experience? I mean, if you're saying you're looking at talent, must it be attached to, must this person have worked in a space for a longer time? Because I feel that that's also part of what is causing unemployment. Because if you're telling me I should be 5 years and maybe I just left school, how am I supposed to, if everybody's saying, 5 years, 2 years, where do I now start from to build my talent?
I think you're asking a very important question, and I'm going to answer it in 2 ways. I think the first part of it, that, an organization would like you to have experience in the particular job that they're advertising in order not to set you up for failure. Okay. Because, within an internship, for instance, the company can't really expect you to have any experience, so an internship is literally your first position in an organization. If you're in a professional context, you will start there and work your way slowly up. But if you are applying for a position that's higher than that, in your field of trade, it's very important to have the experience. Not only does it bring confidence, it brings capability with it. And companies, many times look back to see how many years did it take the current incumbent in that position to really become competent, and they're always trying to replace that individual to a certain extent, but ultimately it comes down to also the risk of hiring someone that doesn't have the experience. So experience is very important.
Yes, I do agree with you. Now, these tips you've shared on how to identify and, hire the best talent, do they apply to all industries? Because, we have food industry, we have the automobile. So do they apply to all?
It applies to each and every single, organization and industry out there. The process, going about recruiting and selecting ultimately that final candidate for the vacancy remains the same in most organizations, whether you're recruiting from internally or from externally. Organizations would always like to know who is the best from this group of people that applied. And for that, you need to do some kind of assessment in order to predict the behavior and competence that you expect from the candidate in that position. Okay, all right.
Now, in this recruitment, still on identifying talent, for one to identify talent, whoever it is that is recruiting has to be good themselves. So how does an organization make sure they get people who will help to identify and have the talent that they need to help their business grow?
Well, that is what industrial psychologists specialize in, So partnering with an industrial psychologist can really help an organization in 2 parts. It can really help them to define the position. It can really help them to look at it from a more global perspective in terms of, the behavior, the culture of the organization, the values of the organization, the interest that individual incumbent must have. So it's quite broad, and not everyone, can always get to those more intricate parts of the job in order for someone to fit into the organization. So, what we assist with is really to dig down on those psychological competencies and criteria that is important for a particular position. And we can assist in that way.
Right. All right. Now let's talk about your company now, 21st Century. How is it helping organizations, closing the gap to ensure that they do what's right for their growth?
At 21st Century, we offer a lot of HR solutions for businesses. The one part that I'm involved in specifically is with the assessments that we can assist organizations with in the recruitment process. So that is to identify the top talent that's out there and to find the people that will best fit the organization. Also think about stuff like fitting into the culture of the organization, which is very important. If those things are in sync, the individual in the company will be happy and they will be productive, and the organization will ultimately have that difference on their financial bottom line. So that is where we come in to assist with. So it's quite a scientific procedure that we can follow in that. And what we can assist companies with is finding and using the right assessment tool as part of the recruitment and selection process, for their recruitment campaign if there's a vacancy.
I like that you said you not only identify and hire talent, you help them to also fit into the culture of the organization. Because it's one thing to get something, it's another thing to sustain, to make sure that person is productive enough to help the company grow. Now, you spoke about scientific tools that you help, that you use for organizations to help them grow. What are these scientific tools?
So, there's a range of them, Traditionally, you will know about psychometric assessment that is quite popularly used, that is regulated. We got stuff like in baskets where someone will get a small sample of the work. Think about a cashier, you put them in a mock situation and they have to, demonstrate what the capability is in that regard. So, or a pilot, that you would put in a simulator. So those are all types of different assessments that one can use. What we offer is a full suite, but also tailor-made assessments, and screening instruments for, very specific positions and unique positions out there, which is online, effective, and it can really assist companies to cut down on the time that it takes to sift through all those thousands of applications they receive every single day.
All right, amazing that 21st Century is doing its best to help organizations grow. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dirk. I'm sure the audience has learned one or two things about identifying and hiring talent.
Thank you so much for having me today.
All right. That was Dirk Pretorius. He's an executive consultant and senior industrial psychologist with 21st Century. Stay tuned for more.